Hey,
Can you hear me okay?
how's it going, RJ?
Good. How are you, Nadeem?
Good, good.
Awesome. All right. So we are going. I was just kind of warming up the microphone and making sure that everything was sounding good for this. And
Cool.
yeah, I am recording from home today, so I'm hoping that the internet will hold out on us because it's
Okay,
not as good as at the spa. I've got better internet there, but trying this out anyway. So
cool.
yeah, looks
Are
like
you at the
you're
spa often, or
part of me.
are you at your spa often?
I mean, I'm going there every day, to like run the filters and check on the
Yeah,
place and
same with
all
me.
of that. Yeah. So
Yeah,
it's like we don't really get a break away from it entirely at this point
yeah. The
in time.
maintenance is ongoing for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. So how's that going with you though?
not too bad. I mean, I've tried to like put some of the tanks into like more of a maintenance mode, so that there's less heat and less
Yeah.
maintenance overall. But I still have to put in the hydrogen peroxide and then kind of put in like a couple other chemicals once every week or once every week and a half.
Yeah.
Just make sure it's good. The other day, one of the heaters went out in one of our tanks, and I didn't realize.
Oh,
So when I came in, the pump wasn't turning, and I was like, oh. And I look in the water, and there's salt forming. I was like, oh. So I had to go in, fix it all up. It wasn't too bad because at least I'm coming in every day.
yep.
But if I left it for a couple of days, then I probably would have had to replace the pump. So.
Yeah, that's scary stuff. It's like I actually came in the other day and the breaker had tripped on one of mine, like a power surge or whatever had tripped the breaker. So the temperature was
Yeah.
down in one of my float tanks too, but
Okay.
I was able to. It wasn't super low, so I don't think like there wasn't any salt that had formed or anything yet. But that
That's
was lucky, because yeah, that's definitely one of the scary things I've seen that happening with some of the float center owners is there's salt forming in their filtration systems and stuff because they've
yeah.
turned the temperature maybe down too much.
Too much, or they're not
um,
running it enough, I guess.
yeah, so
Yeah.
something that I'm definitely trying to do as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so it's definitely difficult and strange times for us being float center owners. But
Yeah.
um, so I kind of gave a little bit of a prelude into this, like you jumping on, just so that anybody listening in would kind of have a head start. But you've been in the float industry basically since early in your university years, I believe, working
Yeah.
in Waterloo, was it?
In Waterloo, yeah. I was working at Float KW.
Yeah, so you spent like what, seven? How many years were you working there for?
I was actually just working there just for a year
Oh, okay.
before we started thinking about Float Valley and the planning process for that. So it was my second last or last year at university that I started working there,
Cool.
and then after that, Float Valley. So once I came out of school, Float Valley was the next thing.
And how did you first hear about floating, or what was it that got you?
A friend of mine actually turned me onto it, told me to go and check out Float Toronto, the guys downtown. This was in maybe like my second year of university, and I was just kind of getting into a little bit more of the spirituality realm and meditation, things like that. And they're like, oh, you should go check this out. And I watched some videos on it, and people were like, having some really profound experiences in the tank. And I was really intrigued. And so I went to Float Toronto. I tried out my first float there.
Yeah.
It was great. It wasn't that profound experience that I was expecting, but it was very relaxing. And towards the end, I noticed a little bit of something different. I didn't really know what it was, but when I came out, I felt super, super relaxed and kind of just calm, but also energized mentally. So it was a really nice combo. And then I continued floating, and as it went on, then it started to get a lot better, a lot quicker. And then those profound experiences did happen and did
Yeah.
occur, and now they happen all the time, which is awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I found I had a really good first float experience. I think to some extent I had a hard time turning my brain off because I had already I'd been I mean, that was after 5 or so years of consistent meditation for me. So I mean, I was already well versed in kind of that deep meditation experience and being able to get relaxed. And so when I went into my first float, I mean, I had the, you know, the time dilation and lost track of time. And so that was kind of, I don't know, that was the best part of it, but, you know, feeling super relaxed afterwards. Um, and so, I mean, I think it was because like I'd already, like a lot of people do as well, hype yourself up to the experience of what your first float's going to be like. And,
Yeah.
and I mean, I was, you know, sold on it, but,
Yeah. When there's such a large mental factor, I find that like just getting for any of those experiences, it's the best to go in with like no mind at all, or no thoughts, or no preconceived notions of what's going to happen.
yeah.
Someone tells you it's going to be amazing, your mental state's going to be like, it's going to be amazing, and then that doesn't actually allow it to be amazing, which is unfortunate, but that's kind of how it works. So
It's a really great point, and I mean, we don't typically talk too much about floating in this podcast, but it is kind of suitable with having you on, to kind of dive into a little bit more of that stuff. But yeah, it is the challenging thing that we always try to do, and whether it's me or somebody else that's at the front desk, kind of like greeting people in, it's
mhm.
like, you know, to what extent do you share like what your experience has been with floating? Because it may, yeah, it's going to lead to these sort of expectations sometimes. That's the challenging battle with getting people in more often, because just like whether it's physio or massage or anything, like once is great, but you've got to consistently do that practice of wellness to actually get those deeper benefits from it.
For sure. And I find that with a lot of wellness activities that you really got to
Yeah.
give it a shot more than once to see the benefits, and for your body to get used to it, and for you to get adapted to it. Because otherwise, like, you can go for cryotherapy and you might hop in, hop right out, and you'll be like, that was okay. I just froze for a second, and you're gonna sit and feel the benefits. And then when you go a couple more times and you can actually stay in the cold for longer, you come out, you're like, whoa, now I understand what people are
Yeah,
talking
totally. I know you're also a big Wim Hof fan, so that's something that I kind of wanted to talk a bit more about today too, because it's something that I, basically from the get-go of wanting to create some sort of wellness center, like cryotherapy, not just for sports recovery, but also because of that interest in what Wim Hof's doing, and the power of breath and the power of cold for our bodies is something we've been talking a lot more about on the podcast as well lately, just because Kelsey's not here today, but she usually, or she just started a couple months ago consistently doing the cold plunges, and has found like a huge driver of just this amazing feeling afterwards, right?
about. Yeah, you feel like you can conquer the world.
Yeah, I often, I mean, I definitely feel like it's like it's like a cup of coffee without the jitteriness or the anxiety or anything. It's just, it's really powerful, especially if it's towards the end of the day, to try to maybe, you know, get a few more hours of work done or something, or just not to feel totally run down after being at work for 12 or 14 hours that day. It's something
Absolutely.
that kind of helps to end the day off really well. I definitely like to do it that way.
Yeah.
Um, what's your like routine look like for like the cold plunges? Are you doing it weekly, daily? What's it kind of evolved into since you first started?
So when I first started, I started with just the cold showers, and I found that was a good way to ease myself into it. Going straight into the ice bath is probably not something I'd recommend if you've never done a cold shower. It's good to, like, get the feel for what it's going to be like. It is going to be a bit painful. I started with the cold showers. I would just kind of like, towards the end of my warm shower, I would turn it as far cold as I could go. And then after a couple of months, it just got to the point where I could go all the way to the furthest cold. And then I kind of just try to sit with that for as long as I can.
Yeah.
So my routine in the morning is to do a cold shower right after I get out of bed. So I'll just brush my teeth and then go into the warm shower first, but then into the cold right after. I find that's the kind of like sets my day right. And so I do that first. I try to get a minute and a half in where I'm getting all the cold water on different parts of my body so that it's kind of even in that sense. And then in terms of the ice baths, I try to do those maybe like once a week or once every 2 weeks. Lately, I haven't had a chance to do it as much just because of how things are going. But
Yeah.
we do have an ice bath at Full Valley here, and we just kind of run some sessions at the back. Um, those are nicer in a sense that because the cold is kind of enveloping your whole body, you get a much purer feeling. And when you come out, it's a much stronger effect because it's a lot colder too. I know you guys have the temperature controlled tanks, right? Or the
Yeah,
tubs. And so those are even colder than what I can get in the summer here outside. And so the effects from the ice baths is even better than that of the shower. So,
for sure. Yeah, and you guys also do a lot of, or you fairly often do the actual like Wim Hof instructor classes with, I think, is it Dan that does them at your place?
yep, Dan Caniglio, he comes in and it's like a 5 hour workshop and kind of goes through the breathing and the science behind it. There's some yoga and then the ice bath to finish it off.
Yeah, it's super cool. I've been hopefully, maybe by this summer being able to get one of the local Wim Hof instructors to do more of those at our place too, because
Is there
it is.
someone, bro?
There's nobody in Peterborough, but there is. I don't know. Dan's fairly close, but I don't know if you know Ashley at all.
I've heard Ashley, like ice
'Cause
plunge, right? I know ice.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Ashley Ice Plunge. She's done one at the local college here, and I don't know if she used to live in Peterborough, but she came through sometime last year,
Okay.
and I met her there. But yeah, she's kind of done some stuff in the local area, so she might be the right one to reach out to,
Sure.
and go from there.
Or
But
maybe
yeah,
you can become certified.
I've done the. Have you done the fundamentals course?
I've done the course, yes.
So I did that, but it's like a 2-year waiting list to get to the next level.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
Lately.
yeah. So it's it probably delayed even more now that we've had all those kinds of seminars and things canceled in the near future.
For sure.
Um, so at least for the time being, that's why I haven't gone further. Like I do work with sort of athletes that are doing contrast therapy between hot and cold, um, a little bit more than just like the Wim Hof style of stuff.
Are you guys going from sauna to ice bath kind of thing?
We have we more so there's actually a hot tub as well in the like the
Oh,
sports recovery room.
I think you mentioned.
So yeah, it works a lot better than going from the sauna because with the infrared sauna being dry heat, like it takes a bit of time to warm back up or heat back up after being in the cold water.
Yeah,
And so I find it much more effective to do like the contrast baths.
cool. And so how do you do it? So,
Um, I like to do so kind of based off of what most of the research behind contrast suggests is a 1-to-2 ratio of hot to cold. So you do, for example, like 60 seconds of hot, 2 minutes of cold, go back and forth for around 20 to 30 minutes.
wow, nice.
Yeah, so that's kind of that's the prescribed routine that I typically do. I find that whether it's for myself or somebody else that's going to do it, like I like to spend a couple of minutes in the hot tub first, not
Okay.
too long, just because it seems like the cold is that much harder to uh, endure if you've been in the hot for,
For a while.
like 5 or 10 minutes, but just a few minutes to kind of like relax and get ready and kind of get my breathing sort of calmed down before going into the cold. And then I'll kind of alternate, and always ending on cold is the way I go about doing it.
Okay.
Just so that you're not like kind of taking away some of that beneficial effect by like ending on hot again. Like you
Yeah,
want your body to actually like ramp up the metabolism, heat itself back up. And
natural heating. Makes sense.
yeah, so
And
that's
what temperature sorry, what temperature do you keep your hot tub at?
it's so it's at 104, kind of
104.
like the
Okay.
safe yeah, the safe upper limit. Or I mean, well, we actually like they're like those Japanese soaking tubs that are like the oval shaped ones.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
we actually fill them with fresh water every time. So it's not like it's always kept at 104. It's like I dump and refill it kind of thing.
Okay.
So 104 is what it's at for like whenever somebody's in it, though, just as like the safe kind of upper limit.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the cold tub for myself, like kind of around the 40 to 42 degree range.
Okay.
Is what I typically keep it at. It can go down to like 36 at its lowest.
Yeah.
And then it depends on who it is, how experienced they are. Like I find that I agree with starting with the cold showers kind of challenge that Wim Hof even presents for the first, 30 days or whatever. Get
Yeah.
yourself used to going longer and longer in the cold.
Yeah.
But I also find that as long as you're above that pins and needles range, so around like 50 degree water
Yeah.
or 50, 55, kind of like the Tony Robbins cold plunge
Okay.
temperature range, that's sort of doable by most people
Okay.
and feels not so bad. That's kind of where people can start out if they do want to do it and they don't have a ton of experience with like the cold plunges. But I also do like whether it's having the infrared sauna nearby or the hot tub, as long as you've got that hot water, just so you're not, as Wim says, like you never want to reach that shivering point.
Yes.
So having something that's warm that you can get back into to reheat is key to making it like a safe and comfortable experience.
That's really cool. And it's nice that you can temperature control like that and kind of play around with it.
Yeah, it's not like a the chiller itself isn't super expensive. It's just getting kind of like the configuration so that it looks appealing and stuff. So it's in like an actual separate room in our place so that it's not visible or running like this, basically like running an air conditioner next to the tub or anything like that.
Yeah. I've seen some rigs where people have their like an air conditioner kind of thing cooling it and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is kind of cool. So how many you have? Do you have this in one room, the two tubs? Okay.
Yeah, basically it's a room pretty much the size of like a float room that's got the sauna plus the hot and cold tubs in it.
Cool. Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I gotta come by and check it out.
Yeah, for sure. It's a I like that setup a lot, and it looks good. Like the tubs that we've got are like cedar tubs, so it
Yeah.
still kind of keeps that like relaxing kind of spa
Bye-bye.
vibe to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of the setup and that we've got. So as far as kind of opening up Float Valley went, it was you studied like business kind of stuff, marketing.
I was in business and economics, and I did psychology as well. So they all kind of
Okay,
did in well with floating. Yeah.
absolutely, yeah. Like I had more of like the psych and life science background, but I think that psychology being kind of the root of it is important also for understanding kind of the customers and
Absolutely. And also the benefits of all of this, right? It comes in psychology plays a big aspect, I think, in business and then also the physical aspect of the client.
yeah, totally. um and so what was it that led you to wanting to run your own business? Has it always been kind of a dream or
Yeah, I kind of had an entrepreneurial spirit even since I was young and been really into like business was probably my favorite class in school. And I was in business plan competitions and things like that. So I kind of definitely had like a mindset towards doing business. And my dad is also an entrepreneur. And so I learned a lot of things from him. So kind of, yeah, I was kind of meant to do business. I just didn't know exactly what it was yet.
cool?
When I was in school, though, I had originally gone to school for computer science because I was really, math was my thing when I was in high school. And so I slowly kind of like segued out of that and into business and more into like practical applications and things like that. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's awesome. And then so it's been what, about 2 years since Float Valley opened?
yeah, just about three now, actually. We're coming up to three.
Oh, awesome.
So, yeah.
Yeah, congratulations. That's definitely, we just hit, I mean, before it was really unfortunate timing. We had just hit 1 year
Yeah.
as of kind of things starting to shut down. And
Uh,
so it took a lot of the wind out of our sail because I was seeing like it was finally after this first Christmas, like
yeah.
month over month, it was kind of growing each month. And I was setting the goals to kind of beat the last month and keep progressing. And then things like as of March break, just fell right off.
Yeah, it's kind of a downer, that's for sure, especially when the momentum was so strong from Christmas, right?
Yeah.
And going into the summer, I guess it was going to slow down. Like it's going to slow down in June, July, August, but we don't know when things are going to start again. So
Yeah.
it will be an interesting summer because it'll be interesting to see whether people are willing to spend. Will they spend on self-care? Will they not spend at all? That kind of thing. And just it's also summer, so will they be outdoors and will they be enjoying, or will they come inside and meditate? So
Yeah, it's so hard to say. I think I at least one of my thoughts is that, you know, a lot of people will spend their time on vacations or, you know, at the cottage all summer. And I think there will be less of that this year because, well, for one, like cottage country isn't even opening for it's going to be a delayed opening, but also people are probably going to need to be working and not taking those extended vacations this summer,
yeah.
for the most part. So at least we provide something that gives them like a day kind of getaway or a half day or whatever, where they can kind of reset that way. So I'm hoping that there will be some positivity out of that. But yeah, once again, it's who knows when it's going to open back up and all of that. But it's also why, well, for part of it, you know, you've started to shift gears somewhat, or at least kind of expand your repertoire in entrepreneurial endeavors with this new CBD company.
Yes, Flow CBD.
So it's what kind of, I mean, it was you that inspired me even to look at the option of selling CBD at our place
Yeah.
and kind of getting, you know, researching more and seeing how it can benefit people. What was it that like inspired you to kind of branch out and bring in that offering? And I know you've told me that like your mission with Flow CBD is it's going to be like you want it to be the one that most that float centers are kind
Mhm.
of recommending and going with. So yeah, tell me more about that.
So we started doing CBD at Float Valley maybe like a year and a half or 2 years ago. Calix is based in Toronto, so it was kind of like the obvious option to choose them. Float Toronto was using them as well, and we were using them for a while, and it slowly started to become our most popular retail product, and it started becoming like almost just as good as having a service there. So
Yeah.
it was kind of the reason was is because CBD is so effective for so many different things. People that are in pain, that are chronic pain or arthritis or a variety of different things that are using medications to alleviate this pain are able to use CBD instead. It's a lot more natural. There's very little side effects. And it's just kind of easier on the body. And so a lot of the people were coming in chronic pain, debilitating pain, and able to use either to come in to float and kind of relieve themselves that way, or they're able to take the CBD home with them and then use it on an ongoing basis and be able to get day-to-day relief. Um, and so we found it was kind of like an extension to Float Valley in the sense that people could come in, they could feel really good when they're here, but then we give them something to take home with them and they can use that until they come back again. And so it got really popular. And just lately, like I guess in the last 4 months, we started thinking about doing our own line. Like I have a couple of friends that are into the CBD industry. And so I partnered with them and been able to kind of create this product and do the branding and all that. And we just launched our website a little while ago, and things are going pretty well. Yeah, people are really enjoying the product. We've been shipping out orders across Canada, and so it's going really well. And as things start to open again and the float centers open again, I'm hoping that we'll be able to get Flow CBD in a variety of float centers and find ways to kind of pair it with floating. So people will come in, they can either bring their CBD bottle that they had before, they can grab one in the shop, and before their float, they can have some CBD. It's very fast acting, kind of
Yeah.
just sublingual, goes under your tongue. It's a tincture form, so it does act pretty quickly. So they could take it maybe 10 minutes before their float. And once they get into the session, they will feel the benefits. Their mind will relax a lot more. Their muscles will relax, and they'll feel that deep meditative experience sometimes even when they're not expecting it or they're not mentally ready for it. The CBD kind of eases them in and makes them have that great time. So it's good for floats because in the sense that, like I said, the first one is sometimes a little bit difficult for people,
Yeah.
and this is something that could definitely ease that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Is there I was thinking, as you told me about this and the kind of goal of having it in float centers, is is that what you see the best option being, where a customer would kind of have the CBD that's already theirs, or they purchase it at the spa? Um, is there another way? Like, have you thought of a way to have, like, an intro sample? Like, I remember I think the first float I did at Float Valley, you guys have the kava there, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
is there any other way to, like, provide or offer it as like a sample?
So yeah, we were something we were thinking about developing soon. So right now we just started with the tincture, and which is more of like a long-term use thing rather than a one-time use. But we could make probably packets or some kind of capsule or something like that that people could have just as a one-time use. It could be provided at the front desk for maybe a couple dollars or just for as a complimentary thing, and that would then help them get into the session just like the Kava does. And then afterwards they can decide if they wanted to purchase it or not. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's something we've definitely been thinking of, and I think it's a great idea. If you have any ideas, then please let me know as well.
yeah, I'll keep thinking about it. But I was thinking something like that makes sense to me. I don't know how, like, practical it would be to provide, like, it's funny, the first thought to my mind is like, well, it's not a very practical one, but it's like you're dropping like drops into people's mouths. It's like, that doesn't
Yeah.
really work, but there's got to be another solution that could work.
Some type of one time use thing, because
Yeah,
I find people are a little bit more adverse to like trying something out of just like a bottle or something, but when it's packaged and it's single use, then
yeah,
people are they're a lot happier with that. So
yeah. So I'm sure there's kind of like a way to figure out how to go about that. Something else that, you know, with kind of related to the CBD that I find quite fascinating, and it's the central theme of the podcast, is all about the flow state, which I think you've read Stealing Fire, haven't you?
yes, it's a
Yeah,
great.
yeah, absolutely. So you're fairly well versed in kind of like the concept of flow, but I know that those guys like Stephen Cutler, and I think um, they have like the Flow Research Collective. They
Yeah,
were actually curious about investigating the relationship between CBD and flow.
interesting.
Um, and I think so far the research has been pretty inconclusive. Like, it's not really doing what they were hoping it would, but I mean, it's still, I think it's still useful as far as like a tool for kind of getting into to flow in some ways. If somebody is anxious, they're going to have a much harder time because you're not really in that state to be focused and present for whatever it is that you kind of get into flow with. But um, so that's one way I can kind of right off the bat see how it would work and help. But with that, we kind of like to talk about, like, what is your flow? What kind of things get you into that state of sort of optimal consciousness?
Yeah. Well, I find like doing combinations of wellness activities to be probably the most effective thing for me. So whether or not it's doing my cold shower in the morning, I'll try to combine a couple things in the beginning of my day to
Oh,
have a really strong morning routine. And
yeah,
then I find that puts me into a really nice headspace so that when I sit down and start working or I want to get into some kind of flow state, it just becomes effortless. And so what I do in the morning is usually the cold shower to start. And then I have a vitamin D lamp. So I get some kind of like either I'm getting going outside and getting fresh air and sunlight, or in the winters I'm able to use the lamp, and then that kind of gives me, I don't know, it kind of makes you feel like you've been in the sun and you've been outside, so it
cool.
gives you that kind of feeling. And then I would go and do a workout, usually something that'll make me sweat for about an hour. If I don't work out, then maybe I'll do something like a sauna or a float, and post after that, either I'll eat or I will just start working. And I find that if I don't eat, so I intermittent fast, those are like very powerful hours for me. So after my workout's done, I'll get into like a workflow for maybe like 2 or 3 hours before I actually start to become hungry. And those are very powerful hours in
Yeah,
my work time. So I find that work just becomes like, it's a lot more efficient. It's put into a much smaller timing, but a lot more gets done that way. And I guess that's the whole benefit of being in flow. Um, and then, yeah, I'll eat my first meal. I usually try to eat something lighter so that my body's not doing too much digestion, so that the energy levels stay high, and I can continue to work for a couple more hours before I usually just kind of call it about like when the sun goes down, usually 7 or 8 o'clock. And then I have my bigger dinner and then try to go to bed around 11:30, 12 if I can. Yeah.
What time do you normally wake up at?
I try to get about either like 6 hours or 7.5 hours of sleep, somewhere between there. I find if I get less or more than that, then I'm a little bit groggy.
Yeah.
So I kind of found that sweet spot. I use like a fitness tracker. So basically that tracks my sleep, and that's able to how I got those numbers. And I find that over time, every morning I wake up and I'll check the tracker, and it'll tell me how my sleep was, what time I went to bed, and what time I woke up, and how much deep sleep I got. And so over time, that's kind of been able for me to realize that this is the amount of time that I need and formulate a plan based off that.
Yeah, very cool. I forgot to even like lead in with it, but you're really into kind of biohacking, and that's your, you know, your Instagram handle,
Yes,
biohack Deem, and it's become kind of the thing that, yeah, you're definitely like standing out with doing. But that's a really solid. I've been talking lately a lot about morning routines, encouraging people to kind of dial it in, because we're in this interesting time where a lot of people don't have to be somewhere specifically. So you can actually make use of this time in a productive way by looking at how you want to incorporate some of these strategies into your routine and see what works for you. And so that's a really solid routine. If anybody's kind of thinking of what they can include, that right there is perfect. And I've noticed the same thing with what time I eat breakfast, and as far as productivity goes, um, I also, to some extent, at least like follow like a sort of like time restricted window for eating, you know. So typically around like that, not necessarily like a super extended fast, but you know, somewhere around like the 14 hour range is typically good for me. And I find the same thing. It's like when that breakfast is too soon or too large, it can really impede that workflow in the morning, and kind of getting those deep work hours in that are super important if you're trying to accomplish bigger things.
absolutely. Yeah, I think a lot of the effort in your body just goes towards digestion, and
Yeah,
that making you really like slower or groggy. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. And then yeah, it was also interesting, you know, how you kind of stack together different things to create flow with, and with like the wellness, kind of the movement and everything. I think that's key to a lot of people too, is to kind of keep that in mind, that sometimes it's not necessarily just like one thing, but it's like the culmination of the pieces can get you into more of like a flow through your whole day. And I think that's you know, that's kind of it's kind of like the ultimate goal. It's not necessarily just flow in one area of your life, but doing it in as many areas as possible to kind of find that ultimate meaning, and what things are making the biggest difference for you.
For sure. Yeah, and I find that even sometimes I'll feel like, in the morning I don't need to do the cold shower. I'm feeling really good already. Like I could start working, but then I know that if I started working at that time, the work just wouldn't be as efficient, and I'd probably end up jumping around in a bunch of different places and not actually be that focused on what I need to do. And so even if I spend that extra hour or 2 hours to get ready, it'll make itself up, kind of thing, in the work time.
It's a great point. I've started to realize that more since I started doing like a 6 day a week at home workout routine.
Mhm.
And prior to this, you know, I kind of threw a lot of stuff out the window in the first year of business, kind of saying like it's all got to just be like work nonstop.
Mhm.
Um,
It's
and
tough in the first year for sure.
yeah, and like you want to as well, because you're dedicated to making sure that all this effort you've put in is going, you know, it's not going to be for naught, because you're doing absolutely everything you can to help the business grow and be successful. But starting to realize through this time, at least for myself, that prioritizing a little more frequently, like the workouts and stuff, is actually like a beneficial thing. Whereas prior to, like, I was kind of worried that I was draining myself of energy by working out too hard or whatever. I wouldn't have the same mental capacity to perform. But it's actually um and I think it does depend to some extent. Like, I can't always do super heavy sort of like strongman workouts, because those do drain a lot of sort of that energy, and not necessarily the willpower, but just like the mental capacity when you're trying to be at 100%. But it does make a big difference if it's just like a mix of strength and endurance training.
So what are you doing right now at home?
Yeah, so like I've been doing the precision nutrition at home workout program. It's like a 14-day plan, and so that's what I've been doing. I do have like a full like strongman setup gym in the backyard, but so I haven't really unpacked it all from the winter, just because the weather's been dragging on kind of miserably. So that's probably going to change by this weekend. I've gone through basically the last 3 weeks. I've been doing this like 14-day plan, kind of did the first 2 weeks, and now I'm back on week one, the end of week one. And it was very challenging. Like, I don't always do sort of enough of like the lunges and the endurance kind of like strength training. So it has been a decent challenge for me that I've really actually appreciated.
Nice. And is it all stuff that you can just do without any props? Like, you don't need any weights or?
There are a few things that's like recommended. They actually, in the videos, kind of showcasing each thing, they just use a backpack for like the bent over rows with one arm or whatever. Like the single leg deadlifts. They just use a backpack. I have a kettlebell in here that I use for those things, but all they suggest is like if you do need the external resistance, to add just like a backpack, or if you've got like a dumbbell, you could use that, but not a whole lot required, and not a whole lot of space required either.
Got it.
Yeah, so I've been enjoying that. It's definitely like been working up more of a sweat than like some of my strength-based workouts, where it's like you're just going in and deadlifting or overhead pressing, and it's not always something that gets your body feeling super I don't know, sweaty like this does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's totally different. I guess you're doing a lot of one rep kind of things too, right?
Typically a lot of lower rep stuff. So this like today it was 8 straight minutes of push-ups and goblet squats for like a single set. So you do 8 reps and back and forth. So it's definitely challenging stuff.
That's tough. How long is it? Like an hour it takes you?
I think pretty much all of the workouts are just 3 sets. So usually they're 30 minutes to an hour. Like this one, with 8 minutes for the 3 sets is just 24 minutes, essentially, like 20 plus rest. So this one was a bit shorter, but some of them where there's like the multiple circuits for multiple rounds, sometimes between 4 and 8 rounds, they take upwards of an hour. So yeah, it depends on like which workout it is, between 30 minutes and an hour.
Wow.
Which,
nice.
Yeah, and that's kind of that's like my limit of my, I wouldn't say attention span, but before I like to work in the morning. So I don't like to not really waste. I don't like to spend much more than an hour before I'm ready to like get down to work and feel productive for the day.
I'm the same. Once it gets around to 50-minute mark, my mind starts going in other places and not really focused on sets as much anymore.
Yeah.
You feel good, right? So you're like, all right, let's go. Let's start working now.
For sure. But something I have actually, this past week, I've been experimenting with, which has been super effective for me, is have you heard of the app Freedom?
No.
It's it's essentially, it blocks, it blocks your internet, it blocks your access to social media, it blocks all of the stuff so that you can only work on like a word processor or edit video or whatever on offline. And
Okay.
I've been testing it out this week, and it's made like a really big difference in that I don't know, that sort of thought in the back of your mind that you ought to be checking your inbox or something, because
Yeah.
you can't. It literally, if it's on your desktop, it closes down the window before you can even get it to open, and it won't load up. So it's been kind of cool. I think I like it as part of my morning routine to just sort of offload some of that mental processing that, oh, I need to do this. It's like you're not allowed to, like it literally won't let you in. So
Yeah. So your
uh,
mind's like, never mind.
yeah. And so after a few days, I've kind of gotten used to the fact like, oh, I'm not going to be able to check my email until 10:30. So I might as well get something done.
Cool. I like that. So you have it on your phone and your computer?
Yeah. So this app, so Freedom, works on like all different devices.
Okay.
So it basically, you just, log in on one thing. And then when you select to start a session, or you can schedule it every day. So for this week, I've been scheduling at the same time.
Mhm.
And it literally like locks out all of your devices for that time frame.
Cool.
Yeah.
Let me play around with that. That sounds
Yeah.
like a good idea. So
It's,
what's your timing that you lock it out?
right now I've been doing it from 8 a.m. till 10:30.
Okay.
um like I don't ever check email before that. Not, like I've got enough self-discipline to not worry, but that time is where I keep the at least internet access so I can download, if I usually have breakfast in that time frame, so I'll download like a podcast to listen to for breakfast,
Okay.
um or or whatever else. I've actually been kind of this past month, I've actually been doing Tony Robbins personal power too.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So that's been my 7 a.m. kind of thing. So I usually up at like 6, even without an alarm. Like I've been, when the sun comes up, like I'm awake. So it's like
That's good.
6:15 is when I kind of get up, even
Yeah.
without the alarm. And then by 7 is when I've been starting personal power 2 for about an hour is what it takes usually. And
Okay.
then my internet's cut off, so after that, I've got a few hours to do kind of focus work before checking into my inbox.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. That's really good. Definitely trying to wake up earlier. So that's something I'm working on.
Yeah. It's are you more of a morning person, or like do you?
I think I function better in the morning, but I also am quite active at night. So I find that it's like I have to kind of cut myself off in one of those areas to be
Yeah.
able to be. So it's just like, I think obviously waking up earlier is a healthier thing. I'm just been accustomed to, like, our shop closes at 11. So
Right.
sometimes I'm until late, and then I'll just end up waking up later and then come in around the afternoon after I go to the gym. So it's just kind of that routine that I have to break up and get out of.
Yeah.
This is the best time to change routines. So
It is. It definitely is. I kind of I mean, my routine's actually a little bit earlier than it is too. We close at 10, but still, if I'm the last one there at the end of the night, sometimes I'm not out of there until 10:30. And like
Mhm.
I typically go to bed at 10 o'clock every night. So that kind of has, when the spa is up and functional is when I'm kind of, my routine's shifted sometimes a little bit later, because I personally need at least 8 hours of sleep to function properly. And
Mhm.
if I'm like training for a strongman competition, it's more like 8.5 hours.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like what works for my body. So that's where it gets tricky. If I am working till after 10, it's really hard to go home and go immediately to sleep, which I sometimes do just because like I do like that morning routine so much.
Yeah.
But it often shifts my sleep and everything by about a half hour or so, um, so that everything. But I actually, today was actually the last day of personal power too, so I'm
Okay.
now
Nice.
kind of, I've got that extra hour in the morning to be a little more, not that that was unproductive. It was actually really eye opening and a great experience.
Good. Yeah, Tony Robbins is pretty incredible person.
Yeah, and I
Yeah,
know you're a big fan too.
for sure.
Have you done any of the audio programs before?
I haven't. I've heard good things about them. My dad's done them before, but I haven't myself. Just the events I've been to.
Cool. Yeah, I like this was the first time I did one of the audio programs, and it's only because they're I think they're 40% off right now for
Nice.
40. Yeah, I think it's 40% for with everybody being at home. So I'm like, well, I'll do one of those and check it
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
And it's very similar. I like you would recognize a lot of it having which events have you done?
So I did Unleash the Power Within. That was kind of like the well-rounded one with all different aspects. And then I did Business Mastery.
Mhm.
And then the one that I saw you at, which was that day event.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool. Yeah, I remember seeing a post on your Instagram story about you being at Business Mastery, which
Yeah.
was
Pretty awesome.
sounds super cool, and I was very curious about. And then yeah, it was funny that you just happened to be at that Power of Success seminar as well, and found me through the crowd, I think, and
Yeah. Yeah. You're a tall guy.
yeah, stood out. But yeah, I think that's cool. And your parents were there too, right?
Yes. Yeah. My dad's super into Tony Robbins. That's actually how I got into it. He had gone to, I think he went to Life Mastery, and then he's like, oh, we got to go. And then he's just been to all of them after that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely it's interesting. Would you ever attend any of those seminars that you've been to again?
Actually, yeah, I found that there's a lot of information being thrown at you just all day. And
Yeah.
so to actually absorb all of that is very difficult. And there's a lot of the speakers that will come in also change during those sessions. So I
Oh,
would do any of them again. I would, it's just like you come out of that feeling like a different person. So maybe it's not as much sometimes the knowledge, but just the environment that I was in for 5 days with the business mastery, with all these people who own their own businesses that had super, super energy that were just constantly like 12 hours, you're just cheering and screaming and like, coming up with new business ideas. And it's just that kind of environment. You come out of it for weeks. I felt like I was on this like Tony Robbins high almost. It was really cool, and it just shaped and changed the way I did a lot of things. I wasn't someone that you had an Instagram, like an personal Instagram account, but I found that during that business mastery that having some kind of personal brand to feed your business brand really helps quite a bit. So whether or not you're lifting weights or you're doing biohacking or whatever, but just kind of something that shows like there's a personal aspect to this, and then you can feed it into your business. And that was one of the takeaways that I got from Business Mastery, and that's why I then created the account. So there's a lot that I learned from it, but also just like the feelings of coming out of those events are incredible.
cool. Yeah, the feelings definitely. I found it interesting, right? Because I've only been to that 1 day event, um, and so I mean, kind of when I podcasted and kind of reflected after that Power of Success, for one, I wanted to go to it while Tony, he just turned 60, February 29th. So I didn't want him, and it was it right. He told a story about how he was like anemic and everything.
Yeah, he's
And
been.
so, yeah, he's been through a lot, and I didn't want to see him out of his prime. I've heard a lot of people go to his events merely for the fact that they want to see like how he does it, which is
Oh
really
yeah, it's
interesting.
like it's like a spectacle, like the way everything is properly organized, and there's people following him around when he's walking to make sure that he's taken care of, and there's all these like straps he's wearing to monitor his vitals, and he's got a team of doctors and things like that because he's exerting so much energy on his body for those many days, and he's doing that every single week of the year,
Yeah,
so he has to kind of like be watching everything.
yeah, it's quite amazing. But I definitely didn't want to miss out on experiencing it. Just in case like his health starts declining more, and so I was happy to have gotten that chance to like check it out and experience it. I don't know if I necessarily do like the 1 day event again.
Mhm.
Um, I am kind of curious more about like UPW. Um,
Honestly, those multiple day events where it's Tony's thing, where the power of success wasn't necessarily just him; it was like a bunch of people.
yeah,
It's very different. Just
yeah,
his energy is crazy. Like even like what he'll do for business masteries, he'll do one day on, and then the next day he'll be somebody else, and then he'll do another day on. But those days where it's somebody else, they'll play videos of him talking, and it's almost just as good as the live speaker, because there's so much energy coming from him. You're like, oh, it's Tony Robbins. I'm just gonna watch it, and then you end up absorbing so much because he's got this like ferocious energy about him.
Yeah.
And so yeah, his speaking and just going there to see him do his thing, it's amazing.
And that's the UPW is the one with the firewalk, right?
It is, yeah.
Did you take part in that?
I did. So it was on the first night. So the first day, I think it was like a 15-hour day. We ended at like 1 or 2 in the morning. And the last thing that we did was this firewalk. And there was like 50,000 people in the audience. And so they had set up about 100 lanes of like 10-foot coals, basically, of fire. And so everyone is like, he got everyone to like psych themselves up mentally to get into this state so that they can walk across the fire without feeling the pain. And so a couple of things he told us was, one is that you should look up instead of looking down, because looking up will help not make you think about what you're feeling as much. So when you look down, you're thinking about feelings. So that was one thing. And then he said in your head, repeat cool moss, cool moss, cool moss as you're walking across. So all you can think about is cool. And it works. Like I didn't feel any pain whatsoever. Walked across 10 feet, and everybody did it. And it was like 2 in the morning. There was people that are older, and there was kids, and everybody did it. And it was pretty cool.
Wow.
And everyone was chanting. So there's like 50,000 people leaving the convention center just chanting cool moss, cool moss. And then that was it. It took about an hour and a half to get everyone to finish it.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
I've noticed something similar actually with just with the practice of the cold plunges, where I've said once you get to a state of being, I call it like being good at it, is where you can kind of pull yourself out of the state of shivering at any point, just because you've gotten used to it, your body's adapted. And I've noticed that there's a point where you can kind of just tell yourself like it doesn't feel cold, and it's not, it's really fascinating. So that's the flip side with heat is that's super cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. It's all mental, these kind of things, I find. So
yeah, it's very powerful things to look into. But yeah, even the audio program, this one was recorded a long time ago. Like you can tell just from his voice is massively different. But it gets you pretty amped up too. Like
how different is this? I was just wondering, how is his voice different? Because I've heard a story about how it changed. So
how, like, what happened to make it different, or what's it sound like?
Yeah, like what happened to make it different? Like apparently, I think it was like he lost his voice, and because he was speaking so much, and his body unlocked like a secondary voice box, and the combination, now he uses 2 voice boxes, and no other humans are able to access this voice box that he's been. So when you hear him now, you can kind of hear almost 2 voices. You hear like this gruff tone, and then you hear his original voice, I'm guessing, but I don't know.
Huh. That's interesting. I'm not sure. I haven't heard that story. My first thought was it was just a result of the pituitary tumor that he had, and like as that growth hormone's releasing, that makes his hands like massive, right?
Yes.
It would also affect things like he's got a huge head and everything, like that would cause his like vocal cords to grow. So that was like, for the longest time, my thought and belief was that it was because of his vocal cords growing and everything. But then I got thinking about it more, and what he does is very similar to what like metal singers do. And so that could, and so like anybody that sings metal or whatever, over time, they get more of like gravelly voice, and like there's scar tissue on the vocal cords and everything. And so my thought, I don't know if it's like a secondary like voice box, or if it's just like over time, like he's used his voice so much in such like a loud and powerful way that it's started to, I guess, essentially create damage to the vocal cords.
It's interesting.
So that's after listening to like this audio program, I think it's a little bit more of that than just like something due to growth hormone, because
Hmm.
I think that his tumor stopped growing at some point, um, kind of early on in his days of being, a success coach or whatever. So I don't think it's something that kind of kept going on throughout the later years. So yeah, but it's kind of my guess on it.
Interesting. Yeah.
Um,
Have
so
you thought
yeah,
about going? Have you
pardon
thought
me.
about going to any events? I guess not in the near future, but later on. Have you thought about? Is there any more events that you specifically want to check out?
Um, I mean, at first, I still think business mastery is pretty cool.
Hmm.
um,
And it's applicable because you're in the
yeah, yeah,
business.
but also, I mean, my first goal about it was, before I even knew the power of success thing, was to go to UPW, just because that's the one I was most familiar with.
Hmm.
Um, and so I thought about it, and I mean, after seeing him the one time, I'm not entirely sure that the whole like audience thing is the proper learning environment for me, which is
Hmm.
why I actually like, whether it's like an audio program or more like the online kind of courses,
Yeah.
is actually something, or even in books, is kind of how I learn better, but the experience itself is super cool. So I don't know, at this point it's still kind of on a list of dream goals of mine to accomplish, is
Mhm.
going to another one of his events, but we'll see what happens in like the future as far as it goes.
Yeah. Events are going to be an interesting thing going forward.
I know, like I've been hearing a lot more with sort of the, because I know you're big into music as well,
Mhm.
um, and like it's going to be a long time before musicians and live music opens back up. So it's going to be very strange. Like we may have to wait even a year or more before we see that kind of go back to normal.
Mm. Unfortunately, but that's okay, I guess.
Yeah,
It is what it
yeah,
is.
it is what it is. That's right. So I guess kind of like the final thing I wanted to touch on, which we've been doing with this sort of virtual flowcast thing, with not being physically near each other, is kind of going through the sort of rapid fire tips of things. And you did cover that morning routine, so everybody should go back and listen to that multiple times. But what things are you kind of recommending people do, or what are sort of the things in your routine right now, specifically related to the circumstances that we're living in, and how to kind of stay healthy at home and all of that?
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, keeping your immune system strong is probably the best thing. Like your body can fight off a lot of viruses and things like that as long as it has the right resources and it's in a good state to do so. So I find that's something that I use. I'm definitely continue taking supplements. So I take vitamin C. I take some immune boosters, like what's it called? Different variety of mushrooms and things like that. Have you heard of
Yeah.
Onnit before?
Yep.
Yeah, so I take an Onnit daily pack. I find that kind of gives me everything that I need in terms of supplements. Drinking a lot of water, trying to making sure that you're sweating, like the detoxing and doing some kind of physical activity that
Hmm.
really helps keep the immune system strong. Getting a really good night's sleep. Yeah, and nutrition, diet, sleep. That's pretty much my recommendations. Yeah.
Yeah, those are definitely like the main keys. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Hmm. Well, I guess you know what for in terms of detox, people, I don't know if you have any other suggestions for what people could do, because some people find that they don't have an infrared sauna or they don't have a way to get that heat. And sometimes they don't want to do a workout. Maybe they're sore or they're injured. Do you have any suggestions on how people can detox otherwise?
Um, it's funny because the it's not yet super applicable because of the temperature. But a few years ago, I wrote this Kindle book that was on mindset challenges, and one of them was about getting into the sauna and kind of getting hot. But
Okay.
at that time, I was kind of like thinking makeshift options, and my friends and I kind of came up with the idea of like the hot car in the middle of the summer as a
Okay.
way to have like a sauna, sort of like hot box your car
Yeah.
into this sweaty sauna. So I guess depending on where people are listening into, they may have like enough sun that their car's getting hot. You could actually use that as like a way to
Yeah, and then they get the vitamin D too, which is a nice combo.
exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, the
I've seen there's like at home saunas, like you can wear like a sauna bag. Have you seen those before?
oh yeah, that's true
Yeah.
too. Yeah,
There's
there are.
they've got
Um,
their
I
own
I've heard pretty good things about some of them
oh yeah.
from other other wellness guru kind of people. They find them to be pretty effective actually. So yeah, you could do that. What else? I think like that's where nutrition is so important right now, and drinking lots of water, and even even considering the quality of the water depending on where somebody's at is important for helping with that detox process. And yeah, those would be the main things if you're not into, or if it's time where you don't want to exercise, because exercise is kind of going to be the easiest solution for most of us to start sweating.
For sure, and probably the best.
Yeah, definitely. Still, it would be the best too.
Yeah.
I've kind of been saying, the caveat there is people, I don't really recommend doing anything that's going to get you hurt at this point, or anything too risky. So keep
Yeah.
it safe and
Yeah.
pain free when it comes to exercise right now, so that yeah, you're not, for one, not in, our healthcare system's already burdened enough, so you don't need to kind of add fuel to that fire. But also, you personally don't want to be going to the hospital or something
Yeah.
to
That was not a
if you
great
do
time to be
like
injured.
no, not at all.
Yeah.
um yeah, I think it's really all I can think about at this point.
Cool. Yeah, me too.
Awesome. So where I guess where can people find you or get
Um,
connected to you?
Best thing would be through Instagram, biohackdeem. Feel free to direct message if you have any questions or need some tips and things like that. Yeah.
Awesome. And also everybody, depending on where people are at, or if you're passing through, definitely check out Float Valley in Markham. It's an amazing float center and just wellness spa overall. And yeah, so I think that's it. Thanks, Nadeem.
Awesome. Thanks, RJ.
You're welcome. Yeah, so I'll hopefully touch base again soon and
Okay.
talk to you later.
Sounds good. Great talking to you.
Cool. Thank you.
Have a good day.